Coward Cowboy hits a rancher. 15 minutes later, his son arrives with 100 worse cowboys. The desert noon lay like a branding iron across Silver Spur Saloon, pressing sweat from every crooked beam and warped floorboard. Riley Quinn stood at the bar, shirt glued to his spine, counting out the last of his trail money, $3 that still smelled of saddle leather and mesquite smoke. The piano clanged a jaunty rag, but Riley's nerves rippled beneath the tune. Certain something in this town would go sideways the way things always did. He slid the coins toward Mabel, the barkeep, and asked for change on a 2-bit whiskey. She poured amber grit into a chipped glass just as the saloon doors banged open and Barrett McCall lumbered in, shadow swallowing sunlight behind him. Barrett's gold tooth flashed like a spur point. 2 hulking ranch hands flanked him, eyes flat and eager for trouble. Riley's pulse ticked up. He knew Barrett by reputation. Cattle king of High Ridge, temper stewed in bourbon, memory long as the Santa Fe rail. Riley stiffened but kept his shoulders loose. Run if you must, his mind whispered, but his feet refused. Barrett closed the distance with a bull's snort, slapped a rolled ledger on the counter, and stabbed a meaty finger at Riley's chest. Your tab, Drifter. $27 for feed you hauled off last month. Murmurs fluttered across the room. Riley unfolded the sweat-softened receipt from his vest, ink faded but legible. Paid that in full, he replied, voice steady. Foreman signed here. Barrett sneered. With one swift motion, he snatched the slip, crumpled it, and let it plop into Riley's drink. Whiskey hissed over paper. Piano notes stumbled, then stopped. All eyes swung their way. Miners at cards, an old widow knitting by the stove, the telegraph boy frozen mid-sip, a heat sharper than the desert welled in Riley's gut. He'd promised himself no more violence, not since the Bitter Creek night, yet something primal cracked. He fished the dripping receipt, set it flat on the bar, proof as clear as scripture, then lifted his gaze. Careful, McCall, he murmured. Barrett's laugh was sour rye. Careful? I own this street, son. You're lean meat on borrowed bone. The room held its breath. Riley's knuckles whitened around the damp paper. With a speed he barely owned, his right fist lashed out. Bone met flesh. Barrett's gold tooth clanged against the bottle rack. Glasses toppled. The piano gave an accidental, discordant shriek as Barrett's girth slammed the keys before collapsing onto the floorboards. Silence thick as molasses drowned the saloon. Dust motes hung midair like stunned wasps. Barrett pushed up on one elbow, blood threading from his split lip, eyes venomous. You've bought yourself 15 minutes, boy, he rasped, spitting red onto pine. My son Harrison is riding, 100 riders behind him. They'll be here before the clock strikes 12:30, and you'll wish that punch killed me. Riley's heartbeat pounded between his ears, but his boots stayed planted. Above the bar, the pendulum clock clicked over to 12:15 p.m., first second of a countdown that would decide whether Riley Quinn ran again or stood his ground beneath the scalding Arizona sun. 12:17 p.m. Riley's lungs felt tight, as if Barrett's threat had sucked every ounce of air from the saloon. He stepped onto the boardwalk, heat searing his boots, and scanned the sun-blasted horizon. Nothing yet, just quivering mirages dancing above the dirt road to High Ridge. But memory painted what was coming. Harrison McCall, jaw like cut granite, and the thunder of 100 horses shaking the bones out of every building in town. Mabel followed, slid Riley's Winchester into his hands. Load it or drop it, son, but decide quick. He thumbed cartridges into the chamber, metal clicks echoing like guilt. The rifle felt heavier than any secret he'd carried. 12:19, a telegraph runner sprinted from the station, lungs wheezing. McCall riders left the ranch gate 10 minutes ago. Going flat out. His voice pitched upward into panic. Townsfolk scattered, shutters slammed, mothers tugged children by the wrist. Even the mongrel dog that loitered outside the butcher's bolted under a porch. Riley's eyes lifted to the clock tower. The second hand swept with cruel leisure. 13 minutes. 12:21, Deputy Eli Porter jogged up, sweat streaking dust on his cheeks. He raised a key. Back alley's clear. You've got a horse hitched at Dawson's livery. Ride hard, vanish south. Barrett'll cool off in a week. Riley shook his head. Leave again, and the desert keeps chasing me, Eli hissed. Harrison won't talk. He'll shoot. So will his 100. Then they'll hear the truth first. Riley's voice surprised even him. Steady, almost resigned. He pressed the damp receipt into Eli's palm. Show them this if I'm face down in the dust. 12:23. Wind shifted. A distant rumble teased the edge of hearing, like far-off thunder that hadn't yet found its storm. Riley felt it in the planks beneath his soles before he truly heard it. Each vibration said they're coming. Inside the saloon, Mabel hammered boards across windows. Bottles clinked in the dark. Riley re-entered long enough to grab a canteen and his saddlebag. As he slung it over one shoulder, the wanted poster beside the door caught his eye. Ronan Price, $2,000 gold reward. His own alias stared back, inked in harsh block letters. He tore it down, crumpled it into his pocket. One more weight to carry. 12:26. Outside, dust rose on the southern ridge like smoke from a new-lit wildfire. Shapes merged within it, indistinct but many. A pulse hammered in Riley's ears, matching hoofbeats that were not yet audible. The church bell tolled noon. 5 deliberate peals. Town historian Mrs. Kettering said each chime pulled a soul toward judgment. Riley wondered whose turn it was now. 12:28. From somewhere behind, a telegraph key clattered in frantic cadence. Word raced along copper lines. Trouble in Silver Spur, gather militia. But no posse would arrive before the McCalls. Time belonged to them now. Riley wiped sweat from his brow, tasted salt and fear. He levered around into his Winchester, the metallic snap loud in deserted air. On every rooftop, watching faces ducked away. Tumbleweed skittered across the main drag like a messenger, too scared to speak. 12:30 p.m., the first clear hoofbeat cracked the silence. Then another, and another, rolling toward town like the opening drum of a war song. Riley squared his shoulders, back to the saloon doors, rifle across his chest. The countdown had run out. The reckoning was underway. Dust exploded off the ridge like cannon smoke, and Riley counted the first rider, then 5, then 30, until the swell of horseflesh became a living wall. The hooves hammered a war rhythm, rattling shutters, shivering bottles behind boarded-up saloon glass. Heat shimmered over rifle barrels slung across 100 saddles, sunlight flashing along cold metal in lethal staccato. Riley stepped from the boardwalk onto the hard-pan street, boots sinking a hair's width into grit. The Winchester rested across his forearm, muzzle angled downward, peaceful enough for onlookers, ready enough for the men who knew guns. Behind him, Mabel muttered a prayer. To Riley's left, Deputy Eli hovered near the jailhouse door, receipt clutched in a sweat-slick fist. The column of riders fanned into a crescent, boxing the town's heart. At its spear point sat Harrison McCall, tall in the saddle, eyes like desert glass. Transparent, reflective, cutting. He swung down, dust cloud dancing around his polished boots, and removed his hat with gloved precision, as if greeting Sunday service rather than a near gunfight. Barrett limped from the saloon steps, arm cradled against cracked ribs. There he is, boy, he snarled, spitting red earth. Teach him what McCall honor costs. Harrison's gaze never left Riley. My father says you struck him. That true? Riley nodded once. Paid my bill. He called me a thief. Receipt's right there. He jerked his chin toward Eli, who stepped forward, trembling, and extended the wrinkled slip. Harrison accepted the paper, flattened it against his thigh. Eyes flicked left to right, reading, rereading, lips tightening around silent arithmetic. Sunlight caught a bead of sweat sliding down his temple. He brushed it away as though irritation itself were weakness. A murmur rolled through the riders. Honor meant truth, and truth here was ink and signature. Barrett's face flushed crimson. Damn blotted paper. Enough! Harrison's tone sliced the air. A debt's paid when marked paid. Barrett's shoulders hitched in fury. He laid hands on me, your father. That is a separate matter, Harrison replied, voice steady as a surveyor's line. He folded the receipt and tucked it into his vest pocket. Then he turned to Riley. You struck first? I did, Riley answered. After he destroyed proof of payment, Harrison's jaw clenched. Wind hissed between buildings, lifting ghosts of tumbleweed that dared skirt boot tops. For a moment it seemed verdict might tilt toward reason, until a new sound disrupted the calculus. A lone horse cantering, iron shoes ringing off stones like distant church bells. All heads pivoted. Marshal Levi Sutter rode in under a black duster, badge glinting sunfire. His stallion slowed to a deliberate stop beside Harrison. The marshal dismounted, dusting imaginary lint from his coat, eyes sweeping the McCall riders, the boarded windows, finally resting on Riley. "Afternoon, gentlemen," he drawled. "I'm here on federal business." From his coat he produced a creased wanted poster. Ronan Price, Gold Train Massacre, $2,000 reward. He held it high. "That face look familiar?" Gasps fluttered through the townsfolk hiding behind curtains. Riley's spine went rigid. The world tunneled to the parchment bearing his old life. Barrett seized the moment, triumphant. "He's yours, Marshal! Hang him and be done!" The 100 riders shifted, loyalty tugged between family honor and federal authority. Harrison's eyes narrowed, scanning poster to Riley's sweat-paled face. "You Ronan Price?" Riley's voice rasped. "Was, until Price was framed." Sutter flashed a predator's smile. "Tell that to the graves at Bitter Creek." He stepped closer, thumb grazing the butt of his revolver. "I'll take him now." Harrison lifted a gloved palm, halting the marshal. "Federal or not, my town, my say. Proof first." Sutter's gaze hardened. "Proof weighs less than my badge." The circle tightened. McCall rifles angled inward. Townsfolk peeked from slits in shutters. Eli edged nearer Riley, receipt forgotten. Sun glare bounced off gunmetal like sparks off flint. Riley felt the clock tower behind him strike one soft chime. 12:31, a stolen second beyond Barrett's deadline. Every heartbeat sounded like a hammer draw. He drew a breath thick with dust and tension, knowing one twitch, one misread heartbeat, and Silver Spur would drown in lead before the next minute died. Riley's throat tasted of copper and dust, but his voice held. "You want proof, Harrison? Read this." He eased a hand into his saddlebag, slow, deliberate, then lofted a weather-chewed journal across the baked earth. The leather slapped into Harrison's palm. Silence tightened. Even horses quit snorting. Harrison cracked the cover. Inside, Agent Samuel Grant's looping hand bled confession. Dates, payouts, the marshal's name etched like poison. Riley watched Harrison's pupils flick left, right, faster, jaw grinding with each line. Sunlight glared off the pale pages, forcing him to squint as though truth itself burned. Barrett barked, "Forgery!" but his protest wobbled, hollow as a cracked drum. Sutter shifted, left hand drifting toward his Colt. From where Riley stood, he could see sweat bead beneath the marshal's collar, darkening the linen. Harrison shut the journal, eyes now two hard flints. "Marshal," he said, voice knife thin, "explain why your signature is beside payouts to the Bitter Creek gang." Sutter laughed, a brittle clatter. "Easy. The Bureau keeps ledgers on informants. Classified business. That book is stolen." He stepped forward, badge catching sun, right hand grazing his holster. "Classified or not, the man with the warrant decides what's law. I take Quinn now." Riley's rifle never wavered, barrel down but heart willing. "Grant wrote a code in crimson ink at the back," he said. "Read it aloud if the ledger's real." Harrison flipped pages, found the thin red scrawl, "The Black Star rides with blood gold." Sutter's face paled. Micro flinch. A tell only gamblers and dying men share. The riders saw it too. Murmurs rippled like wind through prairie grass. Sutter's hand snapped to his gun. Time fractured. Riley felt every grain of sand freeze midair, every heartbeat morph into a drum roll. Sutter cleared leather first, sun glint off steel, muzzle rising. Riley pivoted, shoulder scream forgotten, finger tightening. A thunderclap cracked the noon. Barrett shrieked. A stray round slashed his arm, spinning him backward. In the same breath, Harrison's revolver roared, flame blossoming from the barrel like desert fire. Riley's Winchester bucked once, recoil slamming into bone. 3 shots, 3 heartbeats. Sutter's eyes widened. Badge spinning free as a second slug punched through cloth and pride. His revolver fired wild into blue sky before slack fingers surrendered it to gravity. He staggered, boots carving twin ruts, then collapsed against a horse trough. Water splashed red, lapping wood like a dying hymn. Silence sluiced over the street, thicker than any sermon. Dust motes drifted where gun smoke curled. The clock tower ticked on, oblivious. Barrett whimpered, clutching his graze. No one offered aid. All gaze fixed on the marshal's body. Federal authority bled empty beneath a badge now dulled by mud. Riley exhaled, still aiming at nothing, pulse drumming his ears. His world narrowed to the echo of shots and the half-burned smell of gunpowder. Knowledge that everything ahead, alliance or ruin, would grow from this smoking kernel of truth now lying dead in the dust. For 10 long seconds, nothing moved but the shimmering heat above the street. Then Harrison McCall holstered his Colt and faced 100 riders, voice carrying like steel striking an anvil. Holster your guns. McCall honor bows to truth. Rifles clacked into scabbards. Dust settled. Barrett, still on his knees, stared up. Rage drained to shock, pressing a rag to the crease Sutter's bullet left. Harrison strode over, slammed the journal onto his father's chest. You lied. Nearly damned the brand for it. This ends now. Barrett's shoulders sagged. A man felled by weight beyond bullets. He raised trembling fingers, voice coarse. I retract my claim. The debt was paid. My pride. My mistake. The words seemed to cost him blood with each syllable. A collective exhale rippled across the street. Doors creaking open, faces peeking from shadow. Deputy Eli darted to the telegraph office, journal pages tucked underarm. Riley watched him vanish behind swinging doors. The tap, tap, tap of Morse code soon followed, carrying confession and exoneration along copper veins to federal judges miles away. Riley lowered his Winchester, arm suddenly rubbery. The noon sun had slipped west. Gold light painted Sutter's badge where it lay half submerged, glinting like fool's gold. Stray breeze stirred gun smoke into wisps of incense. Harrison approached, boots crunching glass. Telegraph will clear your name, he said. Town's seen it, riders too. Price dies here. Riley Quinn walks free. Relief hit Riley like cool creek water, yet left him strangely hollow. Freedom's a word, he answered. Needs land and work to mean something. Harrison's eyes flicked to the horizon, over parched scrub toward High Ridge, where cattle grazed under a stubborn sun. Range wars are coming, he said. Railroad men, speculators. Takes more than bloodline to hold ground. He extended his hand, dusty glove open. Ride with me. We'll run cattle and Mustangs, split share, split risks. Show this territory what partnership looks like. Riley studied the offer, measuring weight and virtue. For years, he'd been a ghost chasing water holes. Now a future stood flesh and bone in front of him. He spat into his palm, shook Harrison's hand. Grip firm, equal. Mabel leaned from the saloon doorway, wiping a glass with her apron, a small grin playing on weathered lips. Children re-emerged, chasing a hoop across the street. Life, paused by fear, pressed play. Eli burst out of the office, breathless. Wire went through. Judge's clerk already telegraphed back. Warrants void. They want the ledger for evidence. Riley nodded, feeling chains he'd worn for years fall soundlessly around his boots. He glanced toward the northern hills, dusk splashing purple across distant mesas. Freedom's color, maybe. Barrett, humbled, managed a nod Riley's way. An apology unsaid but understood. 2 ranch hands lifted the wounded patriarch, guiding him toward the doctors. Sutter's body would ride south at dawn, badge sealed in a coffin as corrupt as its bearer. But tonight lanterns flickered back to life inside Silver Spur, piano coaxed into a lively two-step. Harrison clapped Riley on the back. Come on, partner. First round's on the McCalls, for a change. Riley holstered his rifle, stepped onto the boardwalk, and crossed the saloon threshold. No longer prey or outlaw, just a man walking into the amber glow of possibility as the desert whispered outside, already turning stories into legend.